So how do you prevent financial institutions from growing so large and so interconnected that the government can't allow them to fail? That's a question the House Financial Services Subcommittee on Capital Markets hopes to answer today at a hearing up on Capitol Hill. And joining me now is the chairman of that subcommittee, Pennsylvania Democratic Congressman Paul Kanjorski. Congressman, thank you for the time. Appreciate it as always. And, sir, is it really possible for the government to prevent companies from becoming too big to fail?
Well, we're going to try and find that out over the next several months. But today's hearing is to start off and get the impression of as wide a range of the industry and the country as we can as to what they define as systemic risk and too large to fail. And then as we get to define that, to see whether or not we can provide, some people are calling it a regulator. I'm not sure that's what it should be. It's sort of an analyzer or a filtering system so that we can get advanced warnings that we're allowing something to proceed in the economy that may not appear today to be as dangerous as it is, but down the road in the future it could become extremely dangerous.
Analyzer,
so that's what we're working on.
Sir, analyzer, yeah. Regulator, whatever you want to call it. You're talking about a federal entity, right? And a lot of people have said it's the Fed that should play that role going forward. What is your view on that?
Well, I want to reserve what my view would be until I hear everyone else's comments. My own impression, first off, is that the Fed has everything it can do right now to resolve the crisis that we're in, and they probably have a burden that almost may be equal to their maximum. So I'm not sold that everything should be solved and resolved by the Fed.
Are you satisfied, sir, that given AIG, given Bear Stearns, given the companies that have received federal help, that all those firms were indeed too big to fail? Because you know some of your Republican colleagues are saying, listen, they should have been allowed to go out of business, and the country would be better off if they had.
I think we have to establish firms that are allowed to go out of business because it's a cleansing method within the free market system. Unfortunately, if you listen to the testimony of, say, for instance, the auto companies, they make the argument that any one of the three that are allowed to go into bankruptcy will bring down the other two and the non-American auto industry because their suppliers are intertwined and their dealers are intertwined. And we allow that to happen. And did it happen by just chance, or was it a brain thought to get them intertwined? I don't know. But now that we're dealing with things like derivatives, they interrelate companies and responsibility and financial positions of companies in such a convoluted way that it's almost difficult or impossible to get them all straightened out. So I think if in a sophisticated society and economy such as ours and the world economy, it's absolutely essential to see if we can do something to prevent that from happening.
You mentioned derivatives, and that leads me to my next question on AIG. You followed the situation with AIG very closely from your perch there in Congress. How frustrated are you by that situation? We heard the Fed chairman this week express his anger over what's happened at AIG. And are you expecting that the government's going to have to provide even more money in the future?
I think that there is a request now for $30 billion additional monies. I think there may be in the future because actually we're the standby for their counterparty positions in so many areas and would affect a good part of the economy of Europe if we weren't there standing by and protecting their positions. Will we have to do it in the future? Look, nobody can predict the future. We don't know whether the crisis is going to grow and get more severe or whether or not by the end of this year we can turn it around and start getting to recovery. Certainly as the economy gets worse and fails, there's always the strong position, not only with AIG, but many of the companies, banks, and financial institutions that we're presently underwriting, that we may be called upon to underwrite more. If I had to make a prediction, I believe we're going to have to come in with more of a rescue plan than we presently have in place.
Congressman, just ask you really quickly, mark-to-market accounting still being debated there. Do you believe it should remain in place?
Well, we're going to look at. I have a hearing on that in just a few weeks. We're going to take the whole issue up. I think we've made too much of an absolute out of mark-to-market. I think it's an accounting rule that perhaps should lend itself to some flexibility, and if we were flexible at it, depending on the circumstances and the time, we wouldn't be under the gun. We're actually shooting some of our good financial institutions because of an accounting rule. That's very severe, very harsh. I think if we can soften, we'll be better.
Mr. Chairman, we got to run. Thanks for the time. We appreciate it. We'll be following your hearing today. And